We're always revisiting our priors and saying, like, does this still hold true as a strategy? Is it serving us well? So that we don't trick ourselves into thinking like, cool, we create a bunch of content, but there's not actually perennial benefit from it.
Welcome to the Entail AI podcast, where we go behind the scenes with top marketing leaders and innovators who are driving growth for their brands. Today, we welcome Ben Grynol to the podcast. Ben has founded several businesses and has worked as a consultant for i3 and Deloitte Canada. Ben is currently the head of growth at Levels, a company focused on educating people about metabolic health. This episode digs into Ben's insights into the growth strategies he applies in the health tech sector.
I often say that in health, there's just a lot of topics that you can speak about, a lot of education that can really be part of the user journey, be part of the consideration process when somebody wants to buy a product. So maybe you can speak a bit about that, about how to drive growth in health tech versus other industries.
I think there's multiple things to unpack with it. How to think about growth as it pertains to health tech, how to think about growth as it pertains to what we're doing with Levels. There's a lot we could unpack, but why don't we go down the path of the way we're thinking about achieving our mission with Levels and how that ties into sort of marketing and growth and all these things. So the first thing is the education component of it, which sounds kind of silly, but we're very much like a content-driven company. We're very content-forward. We know that metabolic health impacts billions of people around the world. Now, can you expect billions of people to start paying for a product tomorrow, or is it realistic to say billions of people will be able to pay for this product in the future? Maybe, but not given the state of the way our product works and the way I think health tech works in general. It's not as realistic an assumption to say you can just get to that path. So what can you do to impact, or one of our goals with our mission is to impact more than 1 billion people in the world. So how do you do that? Through content, through education, through changing people's understanding. And so in I'm sure every country around the world is going to have these stories of marketing gone wrong, the mental models that we have. But in North America, one of the mental models is things like eat orange juice, or is it drink orange juice and eat oatmeal for breakfast? That's healthy. And when you actually unpack that, so people grow up with this thing saying like oats are healthy, orange juice is healthy, like it's fruit and it's a grain. And when you actually look at what that does over time, like that will cause people to become insulin resistant. If you're drinking an orange juice that has maybe 25 grams of sugar, it's like grabbing a Coca-Cola every morning and drinking that. And then having oatmeal, it's giving you a very high glycemic load if it's not paired with fat, fiber, protein. And people might be putting sugar on that in addition to the load that it's already carrying. And so without somebody understanding that, you could have somebody that is highly active, like a triathlete. You could have somebody who's highly active, and they say, I eat healthy, I exercise, I sleep well. And it's like your mental model is that you eat healthy because you've been influenced by marketing for decades that this thing is something you should consume. Now, extrapolate that to countries around the world where there's probably examples of this, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner type of foods that people think are healthy. And the problem is that the only way you can truly understand whether or not they're healthy for you is hearing repetition in content. Like you hear enough people say like, maybe you should avoid this thing, but that's like a nice thing to do as a starting point. But the way that people actually like close that feedback loop for themselves is they see, like we've got the continuous glucose monitor, so the hardware that people wear to see their glucose levels. And the second that people see, we call it like a magic moment, but the second that people will see their own data, their personal data saying like my glucose spiked up to this level, and they know that the level isn't good because we'll provide them guidance on that with the product, but they see that and they go, I have, what have I been doing like all these years? And then the real loop closure for them is when they start to associate the visceral feelings going, oh, now I understand why I feel tired, because they've got content, they've got the insight to say what was actually happening physiologically is around, say somebody ate breakfast at 9 a.m. Around 10 a.m., I would feel tired every day and my head would start to want to hit the keyboard. And I think I needed more coffee. And I figured I didn't sleep well that night. Like it's all sort of the wrong heuristic that we have. And what they realize is that they're going hypoglycemic, which is like this massive crash, right? They're having a blood sugar crash because their pancreas, provided it's working well enough, it has dumped insulin into the blood to like bring your glucose levels down. And so you get these things where people understand by reading content, by seeing data, by having all of these moments, and they go, oh, there is something I can do about it. So back to the whole premise of like, where do we start as a company is saying, like, all of our content is free. It's accessible. We've got the largest repository of metabolic health content in the world through our blog. They're all research-backed and data-backed articles with thought leaders. And then we've got videos. We've got a lot of content that we put out, podcasts through all different channels, essentially, so that we can reach people so they can understand the general picture of metabolic health. And through like taking this first step is like wanting to understand it, that's like a starting point to say, cool, it's possible to impact 1 billion people eventually in the world by giving them a different lens so that they can just make more conscious decisions without necessarily needing the hardware piece of it just to make meaningful lifestyle changes. So it's it takes a lot of reps to keep going down that path, but it's something we're very, very passionate about with the mission.
And so when you say that that you have so much content, I mean, so you chose content, from what I understand. You chose content, or I mean, I usually call it organic marketing because you're using content to reach people through organic channels. So you chose that as your main channel to reach your audience, right? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit about that. Like, you just publish content on like what channels are relevant, because, for example, I know for a brand like yours, and then probably SEO is very relevant, perhaps Instagram. Is TikTok also very relevant? Is LinkedIn a channel, like a valuable channel for you at all? Maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So we've got like the 3 pillars of media that we have, very similar to all companies: earned, owned, and paid media. We're lucky in the sense that we get quite a bit of earned media just from members. So if somebody it's one of those things where you see your own data and you kind of want to share it with people close to you to say, like, I had no idea this was happening, right? So you'll see people sharing screenshots or doing like little mini influencer posts, things like that. Depends on the size of their audience. But we get a lot of earned media where people are just reposting. They create content out of their data, and then even from the content that we create, they'll synthesize it, create their own media from it. And so that's a really interesting thing where it's a bit of a flywheel for us. On the owned front, so on everything we're doing from an organic perspective, we've got multiple channels where there isn't a single pillar. So it's not like the blog is pillar content that feeds the rest of the funnel, where it's like, cool, we take a blog post and now we create a video around it. We take a podcast and we create a blog post, vice versa. We have different topics that we cover through video, through audio, through written material, and sometimes they all overlap. And other times we'll only have video for whatever it is, and it's supported by a blog post after the fact saying, cool, let's synthesize this into something digestible. It's an hour-long video. Let's synthesize this down to whatever it is, 500 words, so people can have the high-level takeaways. Regardless of what channel the content comes through, we always take it and we'll turn it into derivative subcuts. And so we'll take, like, let's say a blog post that might feed Instagram. We'll take a video and we'll cut it down to like 30-second subcuts that have very fast transitions and are made specifically for TikTok or Reels or YouTube Shorts. And so it's interesting how like every channel plays to different strategies. To your question of SEO, the blog's very much SEO driven. It's driven both on keyword, but also we use a lot of long tail for SEO. So we'll have topics where if somebody searched for flax and pregnancy or flax and PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, you might not find a ton of articles that exist online about that. But if somebody was searching for like, should I be, let's say somebody searched the query, should I take flax if I've got PCOS? If you're the top result, like, it's such a long tail thing, but if you can consistently nail the cross section of these topics, then that's like a really nice long tail SEO play. And so we're constantly updating the blog with not only new content, but revisiting old content to make sure that it's still fact checked well based on new research coming out. And then even just the way content can age, we want to make sure that it's up to date and has really good information for SEO. And then where we get interesting results on things like YouTube is our videos tend to be a lot longer. And so the algorithm will, depending on the nature of the topic, we might get quite a bit of exposure from overall watch time. Like average view duration is long. We'll get 20 plus minutes on videos, which is great. And then it's just getting served up to more and more people. And so we'll see perennial effects of that being a channel for awareness. So yeah, it's interesting how it works.
How does your content team look like? Because you're saying that you're engaged in so many different activities. I mean, from blogging to social media to videos on YouTube and so on, and repurposing content, producing new content. How does your team look like? What roles do you have? How do you collaborate? Maybe you can touch a bit on that, because I see that often as a challenge for companies to build that, content machine within the organization.
Yeah. So it was the main foundation from 2019 onwards when the company started, was that content was going to be an important part of our strategy. That was the heuristic we had, and then carry that forward. It hasn't changed. It's held true. So we're always revisiting our priors and saying, like, does this still hold true as a strategy? Is it serving us well? So that we don't trick ourselves into thinking like, cool, we create a bunch of content, but it feels really good, but there's not actually perennial benefit from it, or it's not necessarily good from an acquisition standpoint to bring leads into the funnel, because that would be a dangerous path to go down, doing something that feels good, but it's like tricking you into thinking it's like leading to growth. So we've got our content team is quite lean. We've got an editorial director, and he oversees the entire blog. He's built out that practice. And then we've got a multimedia producer. He oversees video, podcast, social, and that's it. We've got 2 people that do all this media, which that's not the secret sauce. We have a team of EAs that we work with to delegate a lot of the tasks. So the value add is being able to create the content. So Haney, like hat tip to Haney, he's our editorial director and he's a machine. He spent 15 years at Popular Science, is very deep in the space. Like, he is objectively one of the handful of people that would have the depth of knowledge that he does in creating and understanding metabolic health content in the world, just because he spent so much time and so many reps doing it. The interesting thing is that his value add is being able to like think through the topics, help to edit when needed, but it's not to be uploading things to the blog as an example, right? Like that, it becomes a task. It's not to be adding images in and doing all these things. So we've got this team of EAs that are so in the loop with everything we do. They cut down our videos. They manage our full distribution pipeline. They do all the scheduling for the podcast. They do all of the work that most teams spend time saying, cool, we need another multimedia generalist or a producer, or they find like, let's get a podcast manager in and they will manage the podcast only. There's so much less leverage that you get out of that. So we do everything with 2 people. Tony is the multimedia producer and Haney's the editorial director. And it's a full machine now. So we've got multiple EAs that we work with through a company called Athena. And we've got 20 of them on our team. Not growth, but across our team of 40 people. They're outsourced EAs. So we've got, basically everyone in our company has their own EA or a shared EA. So some of the engineers will have like maybe 2, sometimes 3. It depends on how much delegation they need or they do to get leverage out of their time. But like bring this whole conversation about content to engineers. It's like, what is an engineer going to be most impactful doing for your company? Writing code, right? Like, not sitting there needing to communicate a bunch of things, not sitting there needing to like do very transactional tasks. They need to like transform information. And so that's what we try to do across the team, is make sure that everybody has enough leverage on their time so that you can only spend time doing the things that you can do and someone else can't do.
Okay, that's a very interesting approach. So everyone in the company has a kind of like an assistant that helps them with all the, scheduling, small tasks, research, things like that?
Anything that somebody needs that's going to free up their time. So I think the inaccurate mental model that people sometimes have about things like delegation is, cool, I've got an EA. I will get them to schedule a meeting for me. I will get them to it's very transactional, very like menial tasks. And as soon as you say, cool, Tom, do you understand like how to use, let's just say, post hog? data analytics platform, and they're like, I have no experience. Like very few people would ask their EA to do it. It would end there. And so it's like, cool. Well, how could I expect an EA to learn the depth of attribution and reporting in a data analytics platform? They just told me they had no experience. Like, why would I get them to do that? So then you either spend the time or you hire someone else. And it's like, why would you hire someone onto your team and treat them differently than you're treating your EA? Like, if somebody comes on your team, you're going to say, cool, if you don't know Posthog, let me show you how it works, and like watch these videos, whatever it is. As soon as you like shift the dynamic to an EA and you go, cool, like I'm going to assume that you're a smart person. I'm going to assume that you could do anything. You just need to learn. Like we all needed to learn something at one time, like, and we're still continuing to learn. That's what we do. We all learn as humans. Like my guess is that within a week, a month, or whatever it is, a year, you're going to be really proficient. And so that's what we do with our EAs. Like we've taught them how to, people who didn't have video editing experience or audio editing experience, just like walk them through Premiere Pro. Here's how to cut a video. Here's how to add burn-in captions. Here's how to make your transitions better. Basically like trying to push it as far as you can as if they were like a core part of your team. And then you just get massive leverage out of your time. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's very similar to how we run processes in our company. We have a pretty like very old machine that we built now that, I mean, for like recruiting people that are very talented. We know how to test them and then how to train them. And then like exactly like what you say. Okay, so if the person is a good editor and we need a video editor, for example, so we can train them. It can start with a very simple task like how to just trim a video and eventually, you know, graduate to like being able to edit video at a very high level, for example. And we have several tasks, I mean, several jobs or roles like this that we hire for people like that. I mean, it can be a marketing manager or an executive, but I mean, we hire people that some of them are super talented and they also become managers. And I just find it very, very efficient. And I think this is the first time I hear of a company that has this approach, like you're saying, that every person has an EA. Sounds very, 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 very efficient, I think.
Yeah, it's a new way of working. I think it's very much something that it doesn't necessarily feel natural when pushing people to be like, there's two sides to it. One, it doesn't feel natural when it's like delegate. That's one side of it. The other side is like, it can be hard, I think, because it's very natural to become emotionally attached to like what you do well. And so people might get afraid to like give away their Legos. They might get afraid to like, no, like this is what makes me valuable to the company. It's like, no, what makes you valuable is being able to create even more output with your time. And if you can find a way to like make two of yourself, clone yourself, then you're even better, right? But I think sometimes there's like a fear, like I'm generalizing, but in companies there can be a fear like, well, I'll become obsolete. And it's like, yeah, if you become obsolete, that is actually the best case scenario because you are now like totally free to do different work and contribute to the company in more meaningful ways. So yeah, it's something that just takes time, and we're all continuing to push it in every which way we can.
Scaling your content marketing and SEO efforts can be difficult. If you're looking for a partner to help you succeed, Entail AI has the right tools to help you achieve your marketing goals. Find out more at the link in our bio or go to entail.ai to check out our range of solutions.
Yeah, I mean, with the time we have left, I also want to touch on video marketing that I'm very interested in recently, and also influencer marketing. So maybe we can start with influencer marketing. I think, I mean, you're a consumer, and there's definitely a huge market for what for your product, and I mean, it probably touches almost every single person in one way or another. And I think that a lot of the reach that you can have today through video is through influencers. I mean, or I would say through individuals who create content on social media. I mean, people follow mostly individuals, a bit less. I mean, there's also like large brands, but I think most of the content you consume is coming from individuals, and then as a company, you often need to buy exposure from influencers, from individuals. Maybe you can speak a bit about that, about how it is working with influencers, as opposed to creating your own content, your own video content, and what, at the end of the day, it's about ROI. So what drives better ROI? You know, like, are you getting enough views and enough conversions if you're creating content on your own as a brand, or is it working better for you? Like also, you know, leveraging reach through influencers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all important, right? Like there isn't one strategy that's like, cool, like own media is nailed, so we don't need any influencer media, or influencers are nailed, we don't need to do any own media. It all amalgamates in its own way, because with things like own media, we can really control awareness, consideration, conversion. Like we can control every touch point of the funnel and know like how we're nurturing people through it, and whether we're doing email capture to like bring them into the funnel and introduce them to like some welcome series, and again, like warm them up to the content that we have. Whereas influencers, totally different audience, right? Like they'll be reaching, if you've got, let's just say that this is not a real example, but let's say that we've got our audience is primarily health focused right now. And we work with some influencer that is like deep in the gaming space. And like we find that cross section of like their general, like the Venn diagram of like their interests is pretty different from like the health and exercise and like the fitness community over here. But we find that there's just like a small segment of like the Venn diagram overlapping with like, for some reason they because we all care about health, they care enough to like be introduced. Well, working with an influencer in that space might help to bring us completely new leads that, again, you got to work them and nurture them through the funnel. But that's like one avenue. The other side is like working with influencers who are already within the existing space that we work within. And that's we don't work with the fictional example of gamers right now, or any of the longer tail categories that we could go into. It's very much health, wellness focused influencers as our early adopters. But hearing something firsthand that feels like a genuine take from someone is another data point, right? So it's another data point for someone to say, cool, I trust Billy. Billy says that he trusts this product. Now I'm going, like, it might be there in today's day and age. It's not 5, it's not 10, it's not 12, it's not 20, it's hundreds of touch points and reinforcement for people to get over the line sometimes. And so it might just be that example of like, Billy is an influencer they followed for a really long time and they heard levels so many times, but it wasn't until Billy, who has a small audience of 10,000 people, that sold them. It wasn't the actual thought leader that has 3 or 5 million followers that got them over the line, because they know that is like a bot lead, right? Or like a bot partnership. They just trust that like Billy won't steer them wrong. So influencer is interesting because, again, it gets back to size of influencer, size of audience doesn't necessarily indicate influence over that audience, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And what we found is that there have been larger influencers or thought leaders who we've worked with that haven't provided as great bottom of funnel conversions as one would suspect. Like if you're hypothesizing, like, will this person, like, will person X result in N number of conversions for us? And that your hypothesis is whatever. And then it comes back and you're like, wow, that is much less or much more than we had thought. And then vice versa with some of the smaller influencers, because they've got so much reach over their audience, they end up being like you get almost these power law returns from a bunch of smaller influencers, just consistently providing like new leads and converting them. So it's an ongoing game. But I think the most important thing with influencer marketing or partnerships is making sure to find people that you understand the attribution from, right? So it's like, make sure you understand, like, are they converting? It's not just like, what's the CPM? And like, it's too easy to rationalize that something is or isn't working. We assume that, like, you bring on some thought leader, you assume like they must be converting. Even if I don't see bottom of funnel conversions, like it must be working. And it's like, well, not necessarily. And if it's expensive, that's like at a very quick drain on your capital. So it's not capital efficient. And that's where you see customer acquisition costs go through the roof, and then you get into big trouble. So
I hear that's why a lot from many companies, that if they work with, like you say, like influencers with large audiences, I mean, their audiences are often not very engaged, because there's such a large audience. And then micro influencers, and I hear it also like, like women health companies and so on, like if they try to reach their audience through like much smaller influencers, they get a much better return on their spend, because the audience is much more engaged. And also, just like you say, I mean, we see that quite often. Like you're talking about working with I know, collaborating with a very large influencer or like somebody with a brand on their own, and expecting, yeah, this person is famous, then it must drive some conversions or something. It's really not the case. You can see that also in terms of content that drives traffic. It doesn't necessarily convert. It's not just about how many eyeballs you get. At the end of the day, it's really about measuring your bottom line. Which also brings me to my next question about how do you, I mean, you're talking about multiple channels from blogging to podcasting to social media and so on. So how do you attribute sales? How do you measure, or can you even measure like really the impact of each channel? Or are you looking at the compound impact? What do you do to really to attribute sales to the activities and the channel that you work through?
Yeah, we're pretty deep in the weeds on some of the analytics, and I think the key is to be data informed, not data driven. It's something that we care immensely about data internally to drive decision making, but we don't to influence decision making, but not necessarily drive it. So, silly example that I always give is like if you ask a child like, "What do you want for breakfast?" 10 times out of 10, they're going to say ice cream, and it's like, do you use that? Is that good data? And it's like, no, that's terrible data. It's not being data informed, it's data driven. And so when looking at attribution, we make sure that we're measuring, one, we understand like what we want a channel to do or what we expect it to do. So we don't have false hopes that, let's say we're putting resource, time, and money into creating content on YouTube. We know that's not a direct funnel. That's very much like an awareness top of funnel play. It's harder to get lead capture out of that, being like out of individual pieces of content and then out of like YouTube as a platform. Now, is it impossible? No, but does it mean we shouldn't spend time there? No, we just are very aware of like what we expect that channel to do for us. Continue to like create perennial awareness for people, and for people who are already engaged and maybe are already members. It's just like a great retention piece. It's a great piece to like keep them in the fold with what we're doing. But on the bottom of funnel side of things, if we want to work with, let's say, a thought leader, it's very clear to say, cool, somebody does, let's say, an ad read on a podcast. And they've got a call to action, they've got their unique partner link, and they've got some coveted thing that you can only get through their partner link. That is clear. It doesn't mean it's perfect attribution, because like we all know, attribution is never perfect, is far from it, for so many different reasons. But like the likelihood that people will go to that link and take some action, and you can measure that, is more than one. So it's like if you see 0 conversions coming from a partner link, it's pretty safe to say that that's not necessarily going to be a great avenue. Now, if you only see a handful, doesn't mean like it's not good. Do you expect more? No, because it's like it's way too loose. That could have been their 10th touch point. With levels specifically, we hear of people who originally heard about us 3 years ago through some channel, and then it took them 3 years to check out because of the nature of the product, because we call it like the education curve, and the timeline it's steep and long. So it's like the curve, it's really hard to learn about metabolic health and just like snap your fingers, expect you know it. And then the timeline it takes a long time. Like you can't minimize that. So it's hard to minimize the steepness of the curve and reduce the timeline. We do everything we can to do that, but it just takes time. And so with attribution, we try to make sure that we're measuring the right channels with the right expectations, if that makes sense. So life cycle, like they're very much like in your channel, in your funnel, you've got control over that lead. You can measure that with better assurance or better certainty than you could something that's like a loose dart throw on influencer marketing. But yeah, it's challenging. Everyone, I think everyone always has challenges with attribution. So we make sure that we keep ourselves honest, but also don't trick ourselves into saying like, this is the only answer to it.
Okay. Very cool, Ben. Thank you very much. I mean, we went a little bit over time, which was very interesting. Any final thoughts? Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, we're here, sell people on the mission is, if you do one thing, it's do yourself a favor, do your loved ones a favor, and go and read about, let's start educating yourself about metabolic health in general. Like, what is it and what can you do to change it is like the most important thing. That's if you take any action to be able to do that, because that's how you truly understand, like, what can you do to achieve a healthier, longer life. These are things that we all want. And so head to the blog. That's probably your best starting point, levelshealth.com/blog. And you can find a lot of material to dig into. But it's, it's a very important mission to all of us on our team. So we're going to keep pushing to make it happen.
You definitely got me intrigued and interested in that. I mean, like, as I told you, I mean, I try to live a healthy life, and I think I do, but you got me, like I said, very curious about this. And my next question was like, what's the best destination? Like, where can I find this information? But you're saying that your blog, right? So that's where I should look for good information about this topic.
Yeah, written material. So I guess plug them all. Written material is the blog, levelshealth.com/blog. YouTube is just Levels Health. And then we've got a couple podcast feeds, but one's called A Whole New Level, and that's where we talk to thought leaders about different topics of metabolic health. And then we've got one called Metabolic Insights, and that's audio versions. So they're not AI read articles, they're audio versions from voice actors reading the actual blog articles so that you can get an audio feed of it as well if somebody prefers to listen. But depending on whatever media you prefer to consume, there's lots to dig into, and there's long form, short form, there's everything in between. And so it's a good starting point to.
By the way, that's an interesting idea. So you're checking your blogs, and that's AI reading the blog, or it's a real person reading it?
No, so we use voice professionals, voice actors they're called, to read the articles, and we've played around with having AI, but it's just there are a couple of challenges with it. The terminology is so technical sometimes that as soon as the human ear hears that something isn't quite right, then like let's say there's a marker called ApoB, right? And so if something like APOB is maybe what AI would read it as, and so then it's like not even giving people the right idea of like what they're listening to. So we've got we've played around with AI, and it's just we've made the decision internally, and we revisit it often, but probably every 6 months to a year. But we spend significantly more on having these articles aggregated to a podcast feed, and it does pretty well. It gets a fair number of downloads, but it's significantly more expensive. But we, in the effort of maintaining high trust, high quality information that people go, cool, I trust Levels Health to provide me with the right direction. Like, we try to be very unopinionated in our content. It's got a journalistic lens so that it's independent and people can make their own decisions about like what to do. It's not driven by these clickbait headlines like 5 eggs a day is bad for you. It's like, maybe it's not. Maybe that's like propaganda, right? And so we try to be pretty independent in our reporting. And I think some of these little touch points, like maintaining high quality voice readings of the audio articles, are what help to maintain that trust.
And so these voice audios, I mean, is it you upload it as podcast?
Yeah. The feed's called Metabolic Insights. So one of the feeds is called A Whole New Level, and then our other feed, we've got three podcast feeds. We've got one's Inside Levels, which is all about culture and productivity and some of the things we chatted about around delegation, where it doesn't quite fit health and wellness, but it's very much in the way that we work as a remote and async company. And then we've got Metabolic Insights is the aggregation of all the audio reads of the blog articles. And then A Whole New Level is just riffing on health and wellness topics with either within our team or with other thought leaders in the space, where they'll come on and we'll talk about things.
And you've had good experience. I mean, you're having good results in terms of, I've never thought about like just reading out the blogs as a podcast. Sounds like a great idea. Just wondering if it also performs well, if people listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, between our podcast, like, we've got millions of downloads with our podcast feed. And then even we take that content and we have it on YouTube. We've got different YouTube channels for different things. So Levels Culture is where the Inside Levels podcast videos go, and we've got trimmed down versions. Yeah, I mean, it's just hitting multiple channels with different types of media so people can consume it as they prefer to consume whatever media. So yeah, it's good.
I definitely learned a few things that I'm gonna try for Entail. So thanks a lot for that. And in general, I mean, it's been a very interesting conversation. So thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for joining.
For sure. Appreciate you having me on, and super fun to jam on this stuff and just always keep pushing the mission forward.
Thank you for listening to the Entail AI podcast. Join us next time for another masterclass when we sit down with a marketing luminary to reveal their path to success.